It is Friday the 20th of May 2022. Today's Skidmark, this one, is about the question of Finland and Sweden joining NATO. Now before I go into more details about it, there's one thing that I will have to mention. This whole process once again reflects the absolute arrogance of the so-called collective West. They, and if I say they, I mean America and some of the bureaucrats in Brussels, embarked on this mission to get Sweden and Finland into NATO without really consulting the rest of the EU. The most prominent player that was totally ignored was Turkey. Turkey has got the biggest military in Europe, second to America in NATO. And President Erdogan, he is known to be a man of deeds and not so much words. And he is one of those leaders that does not allow anybody to bully him. Now, Erdogan has got an issue with Finland and Sweden, a political issue, and I'm not going to discuss that. The big reality is the rest of the EU and NATO should have discussed it with him before they started this mission. When it comes to Finland and Sweden, I am absolutely astounded that they were so stupid to embark on this mission. Finland has got a signed agreement with Russia, and part of that agreement contains a clause that guarantees neutrality in perpetuity. Now, I don't know which part of in perpetuity does the Finnish people not understand. I'm going to put some pictures up of the people in charge of the military, political people in charge of the military in Europe and in Russia. And you can look at those pictures and make your own decisions and make your own deductions. NATO has been prodding Russia for a long time. And all warnings from Russia was just ignored. The collective West has fueled hate towards Russia in the media like you cannot believe. The problem is Russia is self-sufficient when it comes to energy and self-sufficient when it comes to food. Two basic necessities that any society needs to function. Whereas the whole of Europe is basically dependent on Russian oil and Russian gas, or a combination of the two. America is not so much dependent on it, and they will sidestep the real issues that is going to develop in Europe with this action that has been taken against Russia. To me, it looks like Finland and Sweden looked at what was happening in Ukraine and they said to one another, "We want some of that." I can only laugh, but it is not a laughing matter, it's a serious thing. The problem they are faced now is that it looks like Turkey is going to block their access into NATO, and that NATO application is going to fail. Now that will be a PR disaster for Europe and the West. The practical reality of it is Sweden and Finland have ditched their new position of neutrality as far as Russia is concerned. And whether they go into NATO or not, that neutrality is gone. And there are commentators that said that with Finland and Sweden going into NATO, it makes things easier for Russia in any case, because those two neutral nations on their borders made it a little bit complicated for them if they wanted to act towards the West. Now with Sweden and Finland in NATO, that problem is resolved. So they will just start sweeping West like a big broom. And I think by now it is quite clear that NATO is no match for Russia when it comes to conventional fighting, and Russia's forces are also backed up by some serious weapons that, let's not call it nuclear weapons, but serious weapons. I don't know where this is going to end for Europe. From the things that I see and hear, the EU is speeding towards a nightmare. It is now quite clear that there is going to be serious food shortages. And it is also quite clear that there is going to be serious energy problems. Up to this point, Russia has not refused to supply anywhere. Only places where they stopped suppliers where the people didn't want to pay. And nobody can blame them for that. But what I can't understand is this hatred that is driven against Russia. I foresee that pretty soon Russia is going to be faced with economic refugees on their borders, because Europe is in deep trouble. And I look at this plan of the German guys that are now trying to basically steal the wheat from Ukraine. No regard for the fact that Ukraine's own people is going to need that wheat. The Germans are focused on getting that wheat out into Europe. I don't know how that plan's going to work out. So from what I'm seeing, it doesn't look very positive. But if we look at the inflation rate in Europe, we look at the energy costs, and we look at the food scarcities that are beginning to show. In a previous Skidmark, I did say that I think by December we're going to see governments fall in Europe. And I personally will not be surprised if this whole adventure against Russia is the end of the EU.